Hi, Kristen from the future here. I completely forgot to say that I am doing an end of the year viewer survey. I know a couple of other people who do this. One person definitely is Emma from Emma Books, and my friend Alice from the Geeky Burrow. She does like a blog version of this. I just think that it's a really good idea so that I could get to know what it is, like what kind of content you guys like seeing the most, so that I can better plan what I'm going to do in 2018. So if you can please take my viewer survey, I will be ever so grateful to you. There's a link down below and it should probably take between 5 to 10 minutes. Most of the questions are multiple choice and I just really would appreciate your feedback. So thank you so much for taking it, and also thank you for watching my videos. Hello bookworms! Today I'm going to be doing my November wrap up for you. I had an interesting reading month, so I felt like I wasn't really reading that much, but I did listen to a couple of audiobooks and that definitely helped me like read more than I felt like I was reading. As far as readings go, I had a pretty good reading month with the exception of a couple of books. This is probably one of the first months of the entire year that I have actually read almost every single book that I put in my TBR video for the month. The only book that I have not gotten to is The Language of Thorns, which is right in my vision over there. And that's going to be a priority read for me in December. But otherwise, I read or almost finished reading all of the books that I had in my TBR video, which I'm like pretty proud about because I'm a mood reader. So I tend to just like pick up whatever I'm in the mood for at the moment. And that tends to change a lot throughout the month. So yeah, very happy about that. But anyway, I'm going to show you the books that I read. The first book that I read this month is If We Were Villains by M.L. Rio. This is an adult book and I loved it. If you are a Shakespeare fan, I cannot recommend this book enough for you. Okay, so it's really cool because there's like a mystery aspect that's going on in it as well, and it's definitely a modern day tragedy. So it follows a guy named Oliver, and Oliver has been in prison for the last 10 years where something horrible happened on the opening night of one of their recent shows. So he goes to this like very prestigious school where he is in theater, and he solely majors in theater, and every class that he takes involves theater. So it's like an acting, or I think it's like an arts college. Oliver and his troupe, they exclusively perform Shakespeare shows. They put on like 2 major plays, and then there are 2 other instances where they perform scenes from other Shakespeare plays. So it was really cool to see like all of those incorporated within the book. I thought that Oliver was an interesting character. He is not the best actor of the group, but he is a solid supporting character. So it was cool seeing someone who's a supporting character be the lead character and like have his story being told. The book starts with the present time on Oliver's first night being released from jail, and then it flashes back and it shows you all of the events leading up to everything that's happening in the current time, and then the current time gets like interspersed throughout the book. So you'll see something that's currently happening or something that he's currently remembering. He'll be like at a certain place, and then they'll go back to the events that actually occurred. One of the things that I loved about it most is that Oliver and his group of friends, they constantly just quote Shakespeare at each other all the time, and like there's a lot of like partying and drinking and drugs and stuff, and they'll be like out drunk at a party and someone will like say something and then someone responds with a Shakespearean line, and you're just like, that's awesome. That aspect of it was really fun. I thought that this was so well written. I thought that the characters were really interesting to follow because I can't say that there was a single character that I was like, I genuinely like this person, and like if they were a real person, I would want to be friends with them. Every character was so flawed and every character had their own issues, but it made it really interesting to read about. This is just, again, another example of Flatiron Books putting out amazing books this year, and I'm so happy that I picked this one up. I ended up giving it 4 out of 5 stars, and like I said, if you are a Shakespeare fan, you should read this. Then I read The Raven Boys by Maggie Stiefvater, and this was a reread for me. I actually reread it via audio and thoroughly enjoyed the experience. This is actually the second time that I've read The Raven Boys this year, so now I've read this book 3 times, which is, I never really was good at rereading, but I've made an effort to be better about it this year. And I especially just love, like I said in my last video, just experiencing the story in a different way from when I actually read it on the page. I think that some of the scenes came across as funnier to me when I was hearing them, like hearing the dialogue between characters. So I really, really enjoyed this. I think everyone knows what The Raven Boys is about. I obviously gave this 5 out of 5 stars. The one thing that bothered me about the audio was I did not like the narrator's voice for Persephone. It really got to me, and I was just like, oh, like I just can't take when he does that voice. It did not work for me, but I thought the rest of it was really good. And I swear, like every time that I reread this book, I just learn more about the series and the world and the characters. Like I feel like I know these characters so well and they feel like real people to me, and yet I still manage to like get more out of it every time that I read it, and that just amazes me. I'm always blown away by how incredible Maggie Stiefvater crafted this story and told the story and just really brought these characters to life. Again, 5 out of 5 stars. Next, I read A Study in Scarlet Women by Sherry Thomas. This is the first Sherry Thomas book that I've ever read. I know that she did a YA series, and she also writes, I want to say, historical romance. So I was really looking forward to this because obviously I love like Sherlock Holmes and stuff, and I was just in the mood for a good mystery, and this book really delivered. I like that it takes place in Victorian London. I really liked all of the characters involved, and I particularly loved Charlotte. She was amazing. This book was a lot more humorous than I was expecting. The way that Charlotte goes about getting out of having to get married, so funny. I really, really thoroughly enjoyed this. It's obviously based on A Study in Scarlet by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. So earlier this year I read A Study in Charlotte by Brittany Cavallaro, and I really enjoyed that too, which was also a Lady Sherlock retelling, but that was a modern day retelling. So it was really nice to read a Lady Sherlock retelling, but still set in Victorian London. I thought it was really enjoyable. They also talked about all of these like delicious sounding cakes and pastries and stuff, and it made me really hungry while I was reading. But this was really good. The ending, I was just like, what? So I'm really looking forward to reading the second book in this series. This definitely like kept me flipping through the pages, and I gave this one 4 out of 5 stars. Next, I read Bonfire by Kristen Ritter. It's the same Kristen Ritter who plays Jessica Jones and the girl on Don't Trust the Bee in Apartment 23 and a bunch of other different roles. I've always really liked her as an actress, and I was really interested in seeing something that she had written on her own. I believe she said that she started writing this. She's always been a big reader, and she finished filming Jessica Jones and then went back to her apartment in Brooklyn and then just like started writing. She was like, I bet I have a story to tell, and she did. So that's really cool to know that she even like wrote it herself, because a lot of times when celebrities write books, they have ghostwriters. So to have something come from her own brain, I thought that was a really interesting element. This book follows a girl named Abby who comes from a really small town, and she manages to get out. She moves to Chicago and she becomes like a big lawyer there, and then she presents an environmental case to go back to her old hometown and investigate this company called Optimal Plastics, because she just feels like there's something shady that's going on. No one in the town will say anything bad about the company because the company is kind of like their lifeblood, but she's convinced that their practices are actually making some people sick and that there's been cover-ups. Abby had a really difficult time when she did live in her town, so when she goes back, she's confronting a lot of her old memories and things get really challenging for her. I thought that this was well written. I thought that Abby was like a mess. She doesn't make the best decisions all the time. I mean, she's still intelligent and she's still had a plan for what she was doing, and she didn't lose sight of her end goal, which was good, but she also was a mess, like I said. So one of my complaints about this book was that it was a little bit slower paced than I was expecting for a thriller novel. I thought that it was really interesting. I liked having all of the background, but I didn't love how long it took to get to like a thrilling portion. If it had been pitched differently, I think like as more of like a mystery novel, I think I would have enjoyed it more, because I was kind of waiting for me to be like, I need to know what happens next. And I never really felt that way, but I still continued reading because I was interested in the story. So I ended up giving this one 3 out of 5 stars. Then I read Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. This was my classic read of the month, and I completely loved it. I think most people know what Pride and Prejudice is about. I feel like I'm like the last person on the planet to read this book, but it was my goal for 2017. The one classic book that I wanted to read was Pride and Prejudice, and I completed it now, so I was able to cross that off my like yearly goal list, which was so satisfying. But I really enjoyed this story. I think Elizabeth Bennet is a great character. It follows her and Mr. Darcy, and it is their love story. They have so much like clashing between them before they finally get to the point where they realize that they like each other. It's so entertaining. I loved all of the witty banter. The one thing that I didn't love was that there was a lot more of Lydia's storyline than I was expecting. I say this because I haven't read the book, but I did watch the Lizzie Bennet Diaries, which I know is not the same thing, but I really loved the Lizzie Bennet Diaries. And I don't know, I just really thought that Elizabeth and Darcy would be the main focus like throughout the whole thing. And then also the Jane and Bingley parts, like I knew that was going to be in there, but I just didn't see, like there were some chapters that I was reading and I was just like, all right, like I'm bored of Lydia. I really want just more Elizabeth and Darcy, and that will make me happy. That was my one complaint, but otherwise I thought it was really good. I really enjoyed it. It took me a little while to get into the writing style. I think most of the classics that I've been reading have been children's classics, and this is an adult classic, so it was a little bit more on the dense side, but once I got into like the groove of reading, I was able to kind of pick up the pace because, I don't know, I guess I just acclimated to it. So it took me a long time. It took me much longer to read than it normally takes me to read books, but I enjoyed it, and I'm so happy that I was able to cross this one off my list, and I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. Then I reread The Dream Thieves by Maggie Stiefvater. This is the second book in the Raven cycle, and I reread this one on audio as well. I almost said a spoiler, but I will not do that. I'm not going to say what this one is about because it's the second book, but I will say that I had the same exact feelings about this book on audio as I did as the first book. I really enjoyed it. I really love the series, and I'm so excited to start listening to Blue Lily, Lily Blue, because that's my favorite book in the series, and I just can't wait. I'm probably going to reread the whole series before the end of the year if all goes according to plan. This is obviously another 5 out of 5 stars for me, which actually, I think that I actually have to go back and double check that, because pretty sure that the first time I read this book, I gave it 4 out of 5 stars because The Dream Thieves, to me, is a much slower build than The Raven Boys is. The second time around, I don't know if it was the voices that helped me or what, but or maybe it's just because I like already have this like intense love of these characters having finished the whole series, but I got into it a lot quicker and it felt a lot quicker paced to me. I don't know if I read it at the wrong time. I don't know what, but this time I definitely gave it 5 out of 5 stars. Next, I read Foolish Hearts by Emma Mills. This is a young adult contemporary novel, and I had been really looking forward to this one. This was like one of my most anticipated contemporary releases for the year. Emma Mills is such a great writer, and I read this Adventure Ends, and I loved it so much. I still have to read First and Then, and I'm definitely going to do so soon because I just adored this book. I think so far this is my favorite one of hers that I've read. This book follows a girl named Claudia, and she attends an all-girls private school. Her best friend goes to public school, and she's never really gotten close to any of the other girls that are in her class at school because she feels like there's like a definitive divide between the people who have money and then her who is more like middle class. After the events of this one party at the beginning of the year, she overhears a conversation that she was not supposed to overhear, and she quickly makes an enemy that she ends up getting paired with for a class project that they then kind of bomb. And as extra credit, the teacher tells them that they can try out for the school play, and the school play is put on with the like sister school. It's the all boys private school, and they team up together to put a play on every year. So if you try out for the play, you're automatically working on it, even if you don't necessarily get a role in the play. Claudia and this other girl have to try out, and then they end up working on the play. They kind of end up becoming friends. I just really loved Iris. I'm trying to think of the English word for it, but in Japanese, she's a very like tsundere character because she has this like really hard outer shell, but then she also has kind of a softer side to her, but you really got to break it down before you can see it. And I really loved the fandom aspect of this novel. I thought that was really funny. The love interest, Gideon Pruitt, is my favorite. He is so funny. Like, there were so many times I was reading this book and laughing out loud, and Andrew would be like, "What are you laughing at?" And I'd be like, "This book again. I can't stop." And I would read him passages from it because I just thought they were so funny. And another thing, the main character, Claudia, has like a very similar personality to Andrew. So it was so enjoyable for me to read this. And I felt like anytime that she would be talking, like I would be like, those are things that Andrew would say. There were so many things in this. There's a gaming aspect to it. Also, I just think Emma Mills does such a great job with relationships. So the friendship aspect was phenomenal, just like in This Adventure Ends. I really loved the family dynamics, and I just thought that the whole thing was just, it was so enjoyable. I seriously couldn't put this one down. It's been so long since I've been able to like read at home without feeling like I should be doing something else. And this book I just could not put down. And I think actually I read the majority of it on Thanksgiving morning before we went to dinner. I was like, I just need to finish this. So I loved it. I was truly sad when this book ended. I want more of these characters. I loved it so much. I feel like it's been so long since I've just felt so like happy and so satisfied with a YA contemporary like I was with this one. Like it just really like struck a chord within me. So clearly I gave this book 5 out of 5 stars. And then also I just want to show you that, look at how pretty that is. Emma Mills always has beautiful covers, and then she also has beautiful naked books. And this one is no exception. Next, I read Turtles All the Way Down by John Green. This is one that I had been waffling about whether I wanted to read it or not because I wasn't sure that I would really be interested in any more of John Green's books. I do think that he fixed a lot of things in this book that bothered me about other books. Like, for instance, there's not that whole manic pixie dream girl thing going on. The main character is actually a female. Her name is Aza, and she suffers from OCD, obsessive thoughts, and anxiety. From all of the rave reviews that people have been giving it, I really thought that I was going to enjoy it more, and I just sadly did not. In the beginning, when I had been reading, I couldn't remember if Aza was a boy or a girl, because, well, without them even saying her name initially, it took a while, I think, to say her name. I was like, is this a boy character or is this a girl character? And I just couldn't tell. So that could be a good and a bad thing, because I guess it's easier for anyone to put themselves in that person's shoes if there's not like a clear line. I don't know if I'm saying that right at all, so just bear with me. I felt like the narrative was a little bit unclear in the beginning. There was also a mystery aspect to the story. I don't know, I thought that could have been done a little bit better, but I totally get that that wasn't what the book was about. The book was about Aza and her struggle with OCD, which is a really important topic, and I'm glad that so many people have been able to get so much out of this book. It just didn't really do anything for me personally. There were some scenes that I was reading and I was just like, oh, like, ooh. It was too much for me, some things. I have anxiety myself, and my thoughts will tend to spiral, but in a very different way than Aza's do. So some of the routes that her mind was going down were then like kind of making me think about things that I never thought about before, and I was just like, ooh, this is a problem. So I think this is an important read. I'm glad that it was written. I'm glad that John was able to put like so much of himself into this book, as he said. It just wasn't for me. So I ended up giving Turtles All the Way Down 3 out of 5 stars. Next, I reread Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets on audiobook. It came off hold at my library, so I was really excited. I picked this one up, and Andrew and I listened to the audiobook when we went on a little road trip over Thanksgiving weekend, and then again on the way home. Chamber of Secrets is my least favorite Harry Potter book, but I definitely enjoyed it on reread. When I say it's my least favorite Harry Potter book, it doesn't even mean that it gets 4 stars instead of 5. Like, every book in the Harry Potter series is 5 stars to me, so it's just my least favorite of my favorite series. Again, I think everyone knows what this is about. Again, I also really enjoyed experiencing the story in a new way. I really love Jim Dale's voice, and I'm really looking forward to the next one because Prisoner of Azkaban is my favorite book in the series. So that's going to be really, really enjoyable for me. I have that on hold at the library and like keep thinking any day now, but I'm like, 50 out of like hundreds of holds, so we'll see when it happens. But yeah, I love this one, gave it 5 out of 5 stars. And then lastly, which I'm going to mention but I haven't finished yet, is Leviathan Wakes by James S.A. Corey. As you can see, I am just over halfway into this enormous book and I love it so much. And the reason that I'm mentioning it here is because I told everybody to yell at me if I did not read this book in November, and it ended up being a book that I picked up toward the end of November, and then I was kind of busy with everything going on in like the last couple of weeks, so that's why I haven't yet finished, but I'm thoroughly enjoying it. I'm gonna finish it within the first couple of days of December, and I'll give you like a full recap of it in my December wrap up, but so far I'm really loving it. So those are all of the books that I read in November. A lot of them were audiobooks, which is completely different for me because the first audiobook that I ever listened to was last month. I'm really diving into the audiobooks. The one thing that I will say is that I think they're really working for me because they're rereads. I'm still very hesitant about trying out a new story on audio. So I don't know when I'll like break that next barrier, but for now, rereading on audio is like perfect for me. Let me know if you read any of the books that I talked about. Let me know if you're excited about any of them. If you had to just pick up one, I would say pick up Foolish Hearts because it's so good. So that's all that I have for this video, and I will see you soon with a new one. Bye!